Welcome to Jewelry as Your Side Hustle with Sugar Gay Isber. And I'm Sugar Gay Isber. So welcome. I'm so glad you're here. This is going to be a little something different. Usually I interview other people that are in the jewelry business or a business adjacent, somebody that might be helping a jewelry business, that kind of thing. Well, if you want to be on my podcast, just shoot me an email. But today I saw something that kind of was like really interesting. And if you go bam, 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 and you go to the very end, you're gonna see how I had I was adjacent. Like I'm not part of the story, but I'm like right here. And it's like a really big part of my personal journey. So let's just jump in. I'm a very curious person. I'm always reading everything. And if I'm reading something, I'm going to like click on it and I'm going to find out more if it's something that's interesting to me. I don't even know how this story came to me. I do. It was a picture of a necklace, a really amazing necklace. It was one that was like worn right here. It was all done out of aquamarines and diamonds. They call it a pare. I don't know. It's a French word for this kind of a necklace. It's a little bit different necklace. And it has a great story. And so I started clicking around and I'm like, wow, this is really a great story because it's like so much interwoven into the jewelry journey today. And I'm just so excited to share this with you because it's a really old story. So let's go back to right after the Civil War was over. So in 1865, the Civil War was over. So you can imagine kind of what was going on in that time period. Lots of things happening. Lots of things happening. The war actually, like every war, it like puts money into things that are going on, and then there's like this big rebound afterwards. And so we're kind of there. We're in 1965. The war is over. P.T. Barnum had an exhibit, and this is before he became Circus. So, but P.T. Barnum, that guy, he had in 1965 a display of minerals that he had collected around the world, I guess, while he's circusing. And a little 10-year-old boy saw them, and it kind of like changed the course of history. So the guy was George Kunz, Kunz. And he saw this collection and he was like, oh my God, it like flipped a switch with him. If you're a rock person like me, I can imagine sitting there looking at all that going, oh my God, like look at what is in nature. Have you had that experience? Go to a museum and look at some of the specimens that are out there. I just did the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show. We're still talking about mineral specimens today. Well, what was cool about Kunz is he was like a little business guy, a little entrepreneur. And for his little side hustle, he decided he would make his own collection. Now, during this same time period of when this was happening, was also the big engineering um, feats that were happening, making the Erie Canal, which was connecting like New York all the way to the Great Lakes. So they had to dig up all this earth and move. It was a big thing. If you haven't read about it, I have, because I have a mother-in-law who is in 100-year-old plus house that was actually moved back off of the St. Lawrence River during that time as they dug out the river and made it deeper. So I know about all that history. I've seen all the pictures. I've seen how our house was moved and all the above. It's really fascinating if you've ever been up to that area, upstate New York, the Erie area. So give that a try. Well, so all of that earth moving brought up things that had not really been seen before in the US. So all kinds of mineral specimens. So this little 10-year-old boy is out like hop skipping around. He lived in Brooklyn. So he's looking around and he's, just a little kid, and he's picking up all these rocks. And then when it got to be 1,000 rocks, a lot of rocks, he sold it for, at that time, which was a great deal of money. And then he did it again. And then he did it again. And then his rock specimens got even bigger and better, and they were selling for thousands of dollars in those day dollars. So a lot of money. So he really knew what he was looking for, and he was finding amazing things just as a curious child that had his attention grabbed by P.T. Barnum. Pretty fun. Okay, the story continues. Well, there's another guy that comes into play at this time. He is really the point of the story. His name was Paulding Farnham, like Farnham, George Paulding Farnham. And he was a metallurgist. He was like self-taught. He was really fine sculptor. He was actually married to an artist too. They were like in that time period. Now we're going to fast forward here to let's see, 1985. So 20 years has now passed since Kunz has been finding all of these stones and doing all this stuff. Now, so Kunz goes to Tiffany's and Company. It was a very small little thing in New York at that time. And the original Tiffany, the father who started the business, sees in these stones a possibility of really doing great things. Oh my God, it's so great. So the Kunz and Farnham get to know each other. And so Farnham starts making these amazing pieces of jewelry. At the same time, if you look at this, the line of time that Fabergé was coming into play. So we know that, the metals, they had like figured out things, there was, even some electricity kind of happening in that time. You kind of have to think about what all is happening in that time. Well, Farnham figured out how to carve these stones and make them look like the stems of a flower. He knew his stones, but he was also getting all kinds of information and really great stones from Kunz. Kunz, at the same time, he gets sent by the US government to become part of this geological survey that's just going to survey for minerals across the wherever it was, like just say upstate New York, because they were in that area. So he becomes now a super rich resource for Tiffany's because he knows all the stones, where they're from, how he can get more, what they're worth. Like he knows all kinds of stuff. And so now he's giving that information to the US government, but the government, in exchange for that, is letting him into this circle so that he can like spread the word and they can like learn more about it from him, like because he's been doing this now for 20 years, so he's smart. So think about that. So he's supplying the stones. He went down to Mexico, for example. There's one mine down there, it's probably still there, that does fire opal, and he was spending $1,000 a stone for fire opal, and he made a beautiful necklace out of these fire opals, which nobody had ever seen before. And that's still in the Tiffany's warehouses somewhere, like because it was such a priceless piece. It never got sold. It was just considered to be, really a masterpiece. So Kunz and Farnham are great friends because they are building this Tiffany empire all at the same time, working in collaboration. And if you go and if you look at some of the drawings, they were really based on nature. So lots of flowers and butterflies and, just the floral things and things that we still think of today as beautiful, the birds, nature. So, this is pre Art Nouveau. So there wasn't any of that, like, just like styling going on. It was simply think Fabergé eggs and how intricate they were. And so the same scale in the US, that's happening. Now, they took some of these pieces that Farnham had made, including this one aquamarine necklace that I saw, the Pere, and it went to the Great Exposition in Paris that happened when the Eiffel Tower was opened up. And so they had like the best of all the world, and this piece was part of them. But there was a little bit of kind of the the general public that came to come see these pieces, yes, they were amazing, but the Fabergé eggs kind of like topped up, the boats. So when they came back to the US and Farnham kept working, their original Tiffany's, Louis Comfort Tiffany, died and his son takes over. And his son has a whole different way of how he wants things to happen and what the design should be, and how things artisan, the stained glass, for example, that was kind of started by the father, and things were kind of put together in really unusual ways, and it was Tiffany, so they had lots of money. But at the same time, Kunz was writing these amazing books for Tiffany's. Let me just read you the title of one of the books, because they would do this every year. He would have, like, for their best customers, these books that Tiffany's would put out of, all their great things over the year. It was, like a sample book, basically. I would love to see one. So one of the books was called The Etiquette of Gems. I love that. Natural natal stones, meaning you're kind of like your birthstone, a natal stone. Sentiments, so diamonds would be not having even come into play at this point, really, as the diamond ring of choice for weddings, and superstitions associated with precious stones. So that was like one book that, so actually Farnham got a PhD in gemology at that time. Like, he was really like leading the science. He was the science at that time. He wrote 300 papers and books, and he was, very much part of that whole thing that really brought stones up to something that were beautiful and they go back, like stones go back to ancient times, thousands and thousands of years ago. They were finding little stones, and when they figured out gold and how to, like, or put a hole in it, like, stones have been around for a long time. But these two guys in the US bumped at their game. So you have to think, Kunz was writing stories and books and articles and got a PhD, and like, he was really the pusher of all things great that Tiffany's got a hold of. He had the inside scoop, and that really helped Tiffany's grow too, because then Tiffany's knew how much stocks there were on, a stock being like how much, what was the supply like on, Herkimer diamonds are from that area. They're not really diamonds. They're really just a super clear quartz, but they look like diamonds. They're so beautiful. So these kind of things are all kind of happening all simultaneously. And then Farnham and Tiffany's lose their interest together, because the new son of that's running Tiffany's doesn't want the old guy in there. He wants to have his own stuff. So out he goes, and basically goes away into obscurity. His pieces are signed, and that was really the only thing that kind of saved him from, like, never being found again, because people do know of his works. This is actually how I found him, because there was one of those antique road shows, and it was talking about this necklace that this lady came in with, and she was like really surprised, like, oh, I don't know what this thing is, this Farnham guy. And they're like, well, hold the phone. That's worth like a gazillion dollars, because it was one of the original Tiffany pieces that was actually signed by him. So that was pretty cute. That was pretty amazing. So this is what Kuntz said about the stones at that time that he was finding when he was a young person. The engineering projects brought up the fresh virgin soil, and by the mid 1920s, serious collections were like way, by his 1920, the serious collections were so valuable at that time. I love that. I love that it goes so far back, and that we do know a lot of his pieces. You really need to look him up. Like, he would like carve the stem so they would be rounded in a pin, and he would like put hinges on things. So there was that movement, which was something that Fabergé was doing. Fabergé would put a little trimmer, and a crown, so that from across the room, that crown was really lighting, hitting the light. The candelabras were really lighting up that person that was wearing that crown. So all that technology of being able to put a little hinge on something, it still happens today. But they were the ones that were starting these really Fabergé and Farnham. So we love that about them. I think that that was pretty amazing. Now let me tell you how's that really today. So back in 1976, I was in seventh grade, eighth grade, somewhere in there. Maybe I was in eighth grade. And I'm standing out at the school bus waiting for my mother or something. And a little friend of mine who was 1 year younger, Jay Rockaway, H.J. Rockaway, Harold J. Rockaway, who's passed on now, but he was a very dear friend of mine. And, we just have all this great fun life about to happen in front of us. So we're all happy little kids. And he says something about, oh, my mother has these uh these figurines. It was Christmas time. These figurines from the creche, and then she's done them in gold, and they're in Tiffany's windows. And I was like, what? Oh, okay. Well, I knew where Tiffany's was. I'd been there a million times. I've been in the gallery in Houston since it first opened. Like, it was a part of our life was to go to the malls back then, right? And the Galleria had a great ice skating rink, so you would go there, and then right outside of Neiman's was Tiffany's, and actually it was down the hall until they moved a little bit into a bigger location. And I started watching those windows until I was 28 years. So we're talking about like 13 to 28. So a good 15 years. I've been watching the windows of Tiffany's just because I'm so curious to see what all they put in there. Like, I had no idea that people could actually like put things in Tiffany's windows. So, and that year, I don't know what year it was. So I'm like 28, 29, 30 in that general. I had my glass period. And I say that it's like artists go through their things where they're like super enriched with that, like whatever they're learning about. And mine happened to be glass at the time. Not blowing glass or melting glass, but sculpting with glass for sure. And I I came upon this place, which is still part of my life today. If they only knew, it was a really old warehouse in Pasadena, Texas. It had almost no light. It was like dark. You had to bring a flashlight, and you had to wear rubber boots because at times, if it had rained, the water was up to your ankles in this old warehouse. Can you believe? But they had been making stained glass windows there for 40 years in this old factory, this old place. And they had these really old tiles. They're like probably like a foot by like 8 inches, and they're really thick. And they brought them over from England. That's where they're originally made. And so they would chop those up, and then the stained glass windows come in two kinds. They come in the kind with the copper and the soldering, the flat stained glass that you're used to. And then there's also, if you look at churches, they have this like chunky kind of glass that's set into a black epoxy or an epoxy kind of a product that would harden and keep the stones in. And then they would like sand and put this black gravelly kind of sand on top. And that's what held the glass into these big stained glass windows. So there's this two kind, and they were making both of those. So they had a huge amount of excess product. And because I was like, I don't know, doctor's wife, and I had nothing else to do but make really cool shit, I was in there like so many times. I would just come with like a huge bucket, and I'd be like, okay, how much is this bucket? Like a big 5-gallon bucket. And then I'd bring like more buckets and then more buckets. And all of a sudden I had like all of this glass, and I'm making things with them. I made like things for aquariums where the little fishies could like swim through little glass sculptures. And they were, because it was all done with a silicone, it was all friendly for fish. And so I made these things, and then they got bigger and bigger, and I'm like putting glass everywhere. Like glass became my theme. At that same time, I went up to Arkansas to go visit my grandparents, and on the side of the road was a rock shop, and they had all of this turquoise glass. It's from the insulators that were on the electrical poles. It's kind of like that blue-green glass. You might have seen them before. But this was the slag glass that when they stopped making those glass insulators and switched over to a ceramic insulator for electrical poles, then they had to like get rid of all this glass, and it was like 1,000,000 pounds of slag glass. They just brought it up into chunks, threw it in the back of a big dump truck or truck essentially, and then they would go around to rock shops and sell it by the pound. Okay. So I found this rock shop. I was with my grandfather, and I'm like, oh my God, I gotta have that. I used every penny that was in my purse. This is before we had like debit cards. Maybe we must have had debit cards, but on the side of the road at a rock shop, you're not going to use your debit card. You're going to use your cash. I had two little kids and I was in Arkansas, and I had to drive all the way back to Houston. Must have had a gas card, but I didn't have one penny in my pocket because I spent it all on this glass. It was fabulous. So now I'm like really rich with amazing glass. There's a point to the story. So I made some sculptures, and they were really cool. And I called Tiffany's. I'm like, back when I was in junior high school, I talked to somebody whose mother had her pieces in the Tiffany's windows, and I've been trying really hard to think of something that would be equally as cool and unique to the world that had never been seen before. These glass sculptures that I'm making are it. So, can I come show you? The girl was like, yeah, I don't know. This is like, we don't really do that. I'm like, I promise you they're cool. She's like, okay, bring me something. Okay, so I came in. Tiffany's at this point had, forgot how many windows it was, maybe like 6 windows instead of the original two because they had expanded. So she loved them. She's like, okay, we have 6 windows. I need you to come back probably like next week. They always never give you a deadline. It's like next week. Is that fine? I'm like, yeah, no problem. So of course, I brought the coolest shit for my windows for Tiffany's. It was a really big deal. Um, I worked with her on placing the jewelry in the windows, but I didn't pick out, what went where and how things went. I just kind of like, okay, here's this piece. Okay, what are we going to do with it? Okay, well, here's Elise Peretti was really a big designer at Tiffany. She's the one that did the open heart, that's Elise Peretti. And then also Paloma Picasso had a collection that was all like really juicy gems, juicy combinations of Tiffany's gems. So those were the two women. So it was kind of decided, okay, we're going to really focus on making the windows with these juicy gems that go with this glass sculptures that I had brought in. They were so cool. Like it was really fun. Like I took my kids to go show them. We took pictures. I had another friend that took really good pictures. I think there's probably one of them here in the studio somewhere. Oh no, I know I have it because it's a legacy piece. And yeah, I ended up, well, I'll tell you about that in a minute. The rest of the story. So it was a really big deal, and I was really excited. Well, when I came back home, I had kind of like, I had laid out all the different kind of color combinations that I kind of liked. And there was one more that I could make, and it was little, like little, like that big. It was little. So I had a piece of glass down, and then I took all of these little cuts that I got from this warehouse that were just like little sticks of all different kinds of colors of pinks and purples, and it was really some fabulous old glass. So the glass is the story of this. And you just kind of make, kind of looks kind of like a downtown landscape, kind of like, it's just like tall buildings, kind of like if you looked over Manhattan, you would see all those buildings. And that's kind of what the sculpture looked like little things, but very delicate and dainty and pinks and purples. And I was going to give that to the girl who agreed that I could have my sculptures in Tiffany's windows. So I get there and I'm like kind of like skipping through. I've got my little son with me. He's probably like 2 or 3. And he went everywhere with me. He was just such a little joy. And he ends up being a really good designer himself. And I think it's because he was always with his mother and we were like little pals. So we're kind of like looking at the windows and I'm like, oh, wait, something is wrong. Because like that's not the piece of jewelry that we had on that window. Like, what's up? And then I went to the next windows. We're like walking down. It was on the outside of the building is where they had some of these windows, and then some inside in the mall. And I'm like, well, that's wrong. And then I like look at one window and I'm like, oh, no, something terrible has gone wrong. Because everything was like, it was just kind of like something was wrong. Everything was upside down. It did not make sense to me. I had just seen it like 2 days before and it was all beautiful. And now I go inside and there's like the president of Tiffany's, the head of security, the head of security's assistant, the head of this, the head of this, and they're all these men lined up. They had taken their red eye from New York to come to this Tiffany's because somebody had taken, this is what they told me, a tire iron and smashed one of the windows that had like this Elizabeth Taylor necklace on it that was worth like $250,000 on one of my sculptures. And the president of Tiffany's looks at me and I've got this little tiny thing in front of me. It's so cute. And the girl from Tiffany's that I had been working with, I can't remember her name now, but she's irrelevant. She kind of looks at me and says, do not give that to me. I'm like, okay, gotcha. So when the president of Tiffany's is talking to me, he's like, did you know that there was no security on that window when you put that $250,000 necklace in there? I was like, no, sir, there's no way I could have known that. And I didn't pick the jewelry. I just brought the sculptures in. A little bit more back and forth. They had to like check me out to make sure I wasn't involved in that heist. Yes, I wasn't involved. I had nothing to do with it. I did not know that there was one window that we put the most valuable necklace in there, and somebody smashed the window, take the necklace. So that's why all the jewelry had changed. They had all put it like little tiny things in there instead of these. Wow. So at least I had good photos of it the one time I was there. So then we're chatting up and I'm like talking to the guy and he's really nice and I appreciated, that, he was nice to me. So I had this little sculpture. So I'm like, oh, but I made you a little sculpture. And then he looks at me really serious and he goes, how did you know that my living room was pink and purple? I was like, there's no way I would know that your living room is pink and purple. It just worked out. We ended up writing me the nicest note that I still have tucked away because he was like, okay, you're like a visionary. You like nailed me. I'm like, I didn't. It was just happenstance. And he ended up putting that sculpture on his mantle, he said, and he thought about me often and it was great. So now with that, there became another little issue. And I ended up working for Tiffany's for quite a while after that, bringing them things that we could do the windows in. But after about, I don't know, like 2 years, John Loring, who was the director of Tiffany's and a very prolific artist himself, and also a writer of one of the books on the Paulding, Farnham, and Kunz information, his books that he wrote about that time period, and he brought out of the vaults all of these amazing sketches and things that Paulding had done. So the head of Tiffany's that I never got to meet, but he was in charge of all the visuals for Tiffany's. And he had written a book on Paulding and Kunz and talking about all the things that happened during that time period. It must have been an amazing book. Like it must have written itself. I mean, he has access to everything in the vaults that Tiffany's has. So that was kind of cool. But John Loring decided after my little fiasco at the Tiffany's in Houston, um, that from after this was like probably like 2 years after it came down from the top. It took him like a while to figure out like what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? And this girl in Houston, she's like doing all this stuff for the windows, and it was great. It was like the best time of my life. I had so much fun. We did like Christmas things and the little reindeer. We put little reindeer. Yeah, it was like we use like salt to create and salt and sugar to create the snow and the little things. And, it's all about the whole point of Tiffany's windows. And this is why jewelry, if you're out there selling your jewelry, this is important. And this is what my credence was from that time period where it's all about making a customer stop who's walking by and just go, oh, what's that? And look a little bit deeper. Maybe it's just for 3 seconds. But that time that they're stopping and looking and the little details that we would put into the windows, same thing with Bergdorf Goodman. Now, the window people that design windows are really good at looking at like the minute little detail that you make, but they're not just sticking a diamond right in the center of the window. They're creating a story that draws you in so that you find like, where is that piece of jewelry? I know there's got a piece of jewelry in here, so where is it? And then you kind of have to look and you go, oh, right there it is. It's that you don't put it in the most noticeable place. You put it where they're kind of have to like interact with the window in order to do that. I ended up with a company called Away with Windows, and I designed window treatments for all other kind of stores, mostly jewelry stores, but other kind of stores too. That was like my gig for a while because I really liked it. But back to John Loring. So John Loring came down with an edict because I just kind of like showed up at Tiffany's one day and I'm like, oh, okay, do we have another project coming up? Like, what are we going to do? And what can I do for you? And always subservient. Like, these are the people that I'm working for. And she goes, no, it came down from John that from now on, he would design all the windows. It'd be one design and it would go across all the stores across Tiffany. And we're going to have one look. And it's going to be one thing. And there's not going to be any of this fluffy stuff. And we're not going to be losing $500,000, $250,000 necklaces off the side because, somebody didn't do it right. Meh. That was a sad day for me because that ended my little time to shine, which had started back when I was in seventh grade. And now I got to like do this thing and I really enjoyed it. And it was such a gift and I had so much fun. And, it was really a feather in my cap during that time period. And it was a really fun time period where I really got to explore glass. Well, still, that glass, I have a big sculpture at the ranch that I use those big glasses for. And I'm still collecting glass. I don't know what it's about. But I think resin has a lot of those glass-like properties, So I know that in my jewelry, these earrings, for example, like they're stones and they're set in resin. Can you see how pretty they are? Oh my God, they're so gorgeous. But all of these stones and all this stuff that we work with as jewelers, it has legacy, it has legs. It goes all the way back to ancient times. The first beads that they know that they ever found were of an ostrich egg. Do I have them here? There's somewhere. Ostrich egg beads, which have you ever tried to cut an ostrich egg into a bead with a rock, another rock? That's all you got because there was no metal back then. This is like Stone Age times. They're making things to bedazzle themselves. And it was an ostrich egg was kind of not easy, but I've tried to cut an ostrich egg and I had to get a tile cutter to cut through them. They are so strong. Remember, they're gonna fall out and down onto the ground when they're I don't know, what do you say, when they're birthed? you know, they are so hard to think that you could like shatter an egg and then take those little tiny pieces and then chip them down even smaller so they're a little tiny half an inch, and then put a hole in them with another rock that's going to have like a little point in there. And it's like it's not like metal, but it's so close to metal. I implore you to get an ostrich egg the next time you see one, pick it up and go, could I take a rock and make this, which is like curved, into a bead, like a little tiny bead? Yeah. I have some that I bought in South Africa. My son lives there, and he gives me lots of Easter egg ostrich eggs, and I've done a lot of things for a company here in town where we use those ostrich eggs and made centerpieces on tables, and I don't know, I've done a million different things with those ostrich eggs. I have a couple of them right over there. So I love this part about jewelry, about it is connected to our ancient past, certainly our ancient past. People were adorning themselves. Have you ever been to La Bear tar pits in LA? It's right in the middle of the town. It's like right on Wilshire Boulevard, right? It's like right there where all the stuff is happening. There's this amazing museum. That's where, California is oil town, like it's an oil city. There's oil derricks all over LA, and there was this one area where that tar was constantly there from the beginning of time, from eons and eons, and it would trap, things would fall into this. So I don't know, I don't want to say it wrong, but the little creatures, big creatures, people. So it must have been like, maybe it had like a topping of water on it. I think that's where it was. And all the animals would come to get this water, but once they were like shoved into the water, or there's like a fight, or they're like trying to get each other, kill each other, because that's what they did. Then once they fell into this water and they fell down into that tar, they just became part of the tar. So now that they're excavating this really old tar pit that was from tens of thousands, or I don't know if it goes back how far, but it goes back. I do, because I took tons of pictures of all the reference material. But there was one picture that I took a picture of, and it was they found the remains of a woman, a full skeleton, because she was in the tar. But then she also had a necklace on, and they would have known it would have been like sinew, because they didn't have chains back then. So it would have been like, gut or something like that, or some kind of a thing that they would have woven, like maybe braided some, I don't know what they were doing. But then she had these little dangle things, very much like a necklace I would make today, like, with things that could be put on a necklace that represented her tribe, or what she liked, or things that she found, something like that. Just like we do today. Yeah, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. We are people that adorn ourselves. I also want to talk about, well, this week was the Met Gala. And back to New York again. I saw beautiful gowns. I saw beautiful people wearing beautiful gowns. I saw a lot of weird, like, why are we wearing all this naked stuff? Like, just put something nice on your body. Don't try to, like, we are not turned on by your seeing your butt. Like, just wear a pretty something, because that's what you're there for. It was supposed to be a theme. You're supposed to go with the theme, and the theme was kind of archaic. They need to like make that theme a little bit easier for people to translate into something. That's the number one problem. And then, it's all about the show, and it's all about the drama, and Kim Kardashian, her little midget waist, which is just kind of an extreme. I would have rather have seen beautiful gowns, like there were some amazing gowns. Did you see some of those gowns? They're really pretty. And then you see all the diamonds, because of course that's how these celebrities get there, is because they're really like sponsored by Chanel and Karl Lagerfeld and all those big brands, and who make the dress for them, and pay for their rights to go to the table and, be part of the scene and be seen. And the publicity is what they're buying by having the star or actor wearing these amazing gowns and then their diamond jewelry. I say let's have a different category. And I want to see this for the Oscars too. Let's have it where it's like, let's have some really cool shit in the jewelry department happening there. Because it's not. Like the Swarovski crystal had a beautiful outfit. The necklace was okay. It wasn't great. It was like something I would have done 10 years ago. Like, really, Swarovski crystal, get your shit together. That's why you don't make beads anymore, because you never could understand how to use your amazing product. You had beads in colors and shapes and sizes, and I had them all. I loved them. I love Swarovski crystal. I bought into it. I remember the first time that one of my customers was wearing one of my bracelets, and I told her what all the beads were, and they were amazing, and they all had a history, and they were all old and vintage and never been used before. But I threw on a couple of Swarovski crystals because I don't know, I bought them. And I remember her going, "Oh, look at that. That's a Swarovski crystal." I was like, okay, from now on, it's all Swarovski crystals, because she didn't care that much about how vintage it was. I have so many old things that are around here. I can't even tell you what it is. Oh, really old African beads that are from recycled glass, which I'm doing an African store next. So that's a good thing for me to pick up, because now I know where those are. But anyway, so the point is that we need to like value interesting jewelry as much as these bespoke gowns. Now, Hermes picked me as one of the top 50 artisans in all of Texas. That's saying something. Like, I put in my grade 20 years of working with all kinds of beads, especially Swarovski crystal and fossils, minerals, gems, pearls, blah, 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 those kind of things. But when Swarovski crystal stopped making those, it was because they made the marketing mistake to not promote their product except for little tiny 4 millimeter bicone beads. And I know this because I've talked to all those people. In fact, I had Fire Mountain Gems, who is one of my suppliers, and I love them dearly. And I got to meet the owners one time. And they know me, they love me. Like, I've been a platinum partner there for years. And they called me and said, "Hey, let's do something together." I'm like, "Let's do something together." But they did not understand, and they're like kind of complicit too, is that they would have these big contests, and the contest winners were always the 4 millimeter bicone bead. That's the little triangle kind of a bead. It's got a hole in it, but it's like kind of triangular. It's not soft. It's not easy to wear. I don't like that little sharp edge on my jewelry. I like the rounded faceted beads, because if they're going to touch your skin, it's not going to be that sharp little edge of that bead hurting you. But these people that were winning would have like a million of one color of this 4 millimeter bicone bead, and like just pulled my hair out. I'm like, what are you freaking doing? Like, show your creativity by using the beauty of Swarovski crystal beads. And I was a vetted partner with Swarovski crystal. I signed the documents. I went there. I know them. And I even knew one of the colors that the guy that was signing me didn't even know he had. Lime, my favorite color. Lime. I love it. Very hard to find Swarovski crystal now. And if you're finding those beads, keep them in their little packages unless you're going to use them, because they're only going to get more valuable with time. I have big, huge buckets full of them because I've been saving them for years. And every time they went on sale, I would like scoop up as many as I could afford. So I have lots of Swarovski crystal beads. I'm hoarding them now, but I do use them for all kinds of things. Look on my Instagram, sugargayisber.com, and you'll see that I still talk about that I have lots of Swarovski crystals and I put them into my products. But Swarovski crystal really messed up. They should have had, like, they sent my jewelry around the world to different Swarovski crystal places, but they wouldn't put my name attached to the piece. So I'm like, yeah, why are we doing this? Like, send my shit back. Like, if you're not going to like let me attach my name to, I had people that were like in New York City at the Swarovski crystal whatever store or whatever, and they could see my pieces there, but there was no name. So I was like, yeah, I don't know, Swarovski. You didn't really do me very fair on that. We had lots of discussions, but they never could understand that what they made was exquisite. And that really changed now how we make jewelry, because we don't have access to those amazing, amazing colors. Like the purples that they used to have were magnificent. The blues were magnificent. The greens. I have a customer coming in next week, and I'm like, if we only had those really amazing Swarovski crystal Aeronite, which is one of my favorite colors, kind of like Coke bottle glass green. Yeah, we don't have that anymore. Things have changed, but we need a revolution in the handmade jewelry department where it doesn't have to be freaking diamonds. And guess what? All these places that are like using diamonds, no, they're not. They're using their CZs, which are lab grown diamonds. That's what a CZ is, cubic zirconium. It's the same thing. And all of these people that are making things are, yes, there's diamonds for sure. But there's also a big colored diamond trend that's going on, which is nothing but CZs. I have tons of them. I love them. I just made a necklace this week, and I want you to go onto my Instagram to go see it. It's yellow. So there is a diamond. So this is all how it's going to go around. The end of the story is there is a diamond called the Yellow Rose. Oh my God, the Yellow Rose. Well, and it's going to be auctioned. It's 202 carats of perfect yellow, and it's shaped like an egg. You know, egg and shaped like an egg, and it's going to be auctioned at Christie's. And Christie is excited about this because it's the first time that, like, there's something about it, like that this diamond is starting back where Christie's first started. There's some like little trick about that, so it's kind of cool. It's actually I did a reel about it on my Instagram. I happen to have sitting on my table a piece. It was 7 carats smaller, so 7 carats is not very much, but it was a beautiful faceted stone, hand faceted stone, in the same shape, almost the exact same size as this big diamond that they're going to auction next week and at Christie's in New York. So I made a necklace yesterday, kind of celebrating that, and also because the thing that it kind of like makes me kind of happy is if you went back in my life to when I opened up my first sugar factory in Kitchener, Ontario, and it was this big old building. It was fabulous, and on the outside I did a sculpture, and it was called the Yellow Rose because uh, I can't really explain it. You wouldn't understand. But the Yellow Rose, it was like told to me, like, this is the Yellow Rose. This is your gift. This is a big deal. And so I had the Yellow Rose on the outside of my building. And then I go to look at this stone that I happen to have a copy of that's being auctioned in New York. And I'm reading all this stuff about Farnham, and I'm reading all this stuff about Kunz. And I'm like really like immersed in the history of all of this stuff and how it all comes together, and how I'm participating now in some of that same stuff going forward, because I'm using the vintage Swarovski crystal. I'm using these vintage plaques that were actually from Hong Kong from the 1950s. They call them cameos, but they're not really a cameo in a traditional sense where there's like a woman in there. It's not like that. But, and some other things. And I love this necklace that I made, but I love it because it's the Yellow Rose. I called mine the Yellow Rose too, after this big, huge stone that is just gorgeous is in it. If you're a yellow person, you need this necklace. Anyway, I am Sugar Gay Isber, and you can find me on my podcast here, Jewelry as Your Side Hustle. There's a lot of people that have side hustles. It's a very big trend. I've been doing this as my full-time job for a really long time, but I also teach a class called Jewelry as Your Side Hustle, where I teach you the business parts and how to make jewelry. So I'm teaching you both. So that's where I really feel very like taken with this Jewelry as Your Side Hustle. I have a TV show called Jewelry Stars by Sugar Gay Isber, and I'm Sugar Gay Isber, and that's how it starts. And then I also am in a new reality TV show that'll be played on Amazon Prime this summer, probably, and it's called The Blocks, and it's me and like 100 other contestants. It was way too many. That was the one problem. Competing to see who's the best entrepreneur. And I just sent the guy who started that, Wes Bergman, who was very dear, a little necklace from my little bunny collection. I just had all these pieces that were gold plated, and I put one of those little bunnies on some little pink pearls for his little daughter, who's just adorable because she's not even one yet, so she's really cute. But anyway, I have a great life making jewelry, and I hope that you do too. I hope that if you're a jewelry maker, you really like draw it in, learn your craft, learn the history, pick up something that interests you. If you're doing this kind of jewelry, learn about it, go back in time, figure out how are they doing this 10 years ago? Were they doing this? Like, what were they doing? And really learn some of the artists that have come before us, because they really set the time. Collier was one. He was an amazing artist that made all these really big, huge sculptural hanging things, and he did a line of jewelry that was amazing, so easy to replicate because it was just basically brass that they were like, yeah, he had a guy that was like hammering this brass and just making these amazing necklaces, and you can see them online. Look them up, like learn about other artists that are out there and what they're doing, and learn how to use some new products, and always keep learning, always keep learning. And you can stay on your path, but you can go off your path. You're like, oh, I had my glass period, then after that I had my painting period. I painted everything that is humanly possible to paint. I even tried to get the chemical companies down in Pasadena to let me paint their big oil tankers or their oil thing. I'm like, I can't paint anything. I painted a train, a pool. I don't know. I painted everything you could think of. It was my painting period. And my goal was to have every color of spray paint that they made, and I never got that goal. But I still have a lot of spray paint. And I tell people, if my house catches on fire, evacuate the city, because I have a lot of paint. But not, and I kind of moved most of it at the ranch, so don't worry about that. Anyway, I hope you're having fun making jewelry. I hope you can connect the dots to how jewelry is really essential. And that's why it's a 333 billion dollar business annually, because jewelry is everywhere. Like, I'm pretty sure if you went to 7-Eleven, there is some kind of a jewelry there. Like, there's some kind of a jewelry everywhere. Like, look at those silly little bracelets that Taylor Swift made famous. Just some elastic cord and some cheap little beads. Yeah, that's like the zeitgeist of our time. Like, I'm sure if you're not making them, you could, and you probably make a lot of money off of them. I have to, every day keep learning something and making something. And I create a lot of jewelry because it's always changing. And I always think the next piece is going to be my favorite piece, or it's going to be the piece that's going to get the attention that I need to my site to move my company forward. So I'm always learning every piece that I made. I always think, wow, I'm so glad I made that because I learned a little something else. I'm always striving to constantly make. I see it in my dreams. I wake up in the morning, I know exactly what I'm going to make. I have true visions of what I have, and I have a lot of product. Like, I'm sitting on a wealth, like it's just like surrounding me. It's like so much. I could make anything. And I love that. I love that. Like, why not? I've worked for 20 something years, and to be able to make jewelry, and I'm constantly improving, and I hope you do too. That's really the part of this I wanted to say. This long story that I'm telling you about, and how being a little girl, never even thinking about jewelry, never even thinking about glass, Tiffany and Company, all those kind of things. Yep. Those are good memories. I've had a great life because of jewelry. I would have been a lot richer if I hadn't been buying all this shit, though. But regardless, I've had a great life because of jewelry. And I hope that in your quest to fill this artist need that we have to create, that you come up with something that is remarkable. And I hope that you share it with us. Please write to me, send me something. Look on my Instagram, Sugar Gay Isber. Everything is Sugar Gay Isber. There's a lot of sugar out there. There's a lot of gay out there, but there's only one Sugar Gay Isber. So you can find me. And I hope you had a great day today. I'm trying to see how much time we had. Oh, yeah, it's time. Have a great day. Go see my yellow rose and find me on Instagram. And I'll see you in the next podcast. Have a great day.